Welcome to Mindful Monday. My name is Allison Knight, and I am the health coach at Employee Health Center. Last week, we talked about creating that action plan. We talked about, in the past, our signs, our symptoms, our unhelpful thought patterns, and now we wrote that down in paper to help us identify when we're starting to lose control, when things are starting to spiral downwards. And then we talked about taking action. And by taking action, we talked about, first of all, using that 3-minute breathing space as much as possible when we feel like our feelings and our thoughts are starting to overwhelm us, when we're starting to lose control, starting with that. And then identifying a few of the mindfulness practices that we've gone through that we personally feel like benefit us most, whether that's body scan or mindful movement, or sitting meditation, or just some breathing. And then taking action by looking at that mastery and pleasure activity calendar that we did, remembering doing something to help bring ourselves out of that funk, and either igniting joy and pleasure in those pleasury activities, or doing something that gives us a sense of accomplishment, and is something is different once we're done with those mastery activities. We also talked about looking at things that we've experienced in the past that might have been obstacles or barriers, and identifying how we are going to overcome those barriers and have that as part of our action plan so that we can utilize that when we do hit a bump in the road. And that reminding ourselves to continue doing this mindfulness practice, and that this action plan is really not going to be any different than what we are already doing in our daily life. But we're going to turn to it and use it when we feel like we need it most. And then it should be easy to do because it's already part of our life. And at the bottom, you may want to sign and date it and then update it as you need it. You might find other practices helpful. You might run into other barriers that you now want to come up with a plan to help yourself overcome. And doing this mindfulness practice, we have basically tried to create a new relationship with our thoughts and identifying our thoughts as thoughts and not as the truth, finding those underlying emotions and feelings that are really giving birth to those thoughts, especially negative thoughts, and also helping ourselves realize that if we are in a state of depression, that we need to do something, we need to take action before we're going to want to do it, before we're motivated to do it, because motivation works backwards when we talk about depression. And now we're getting to the end where we are going to talk about, well, what now? And I'm going to read you an excerpt. The summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is your plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Mary Oliver. And now I want you to think to yourself, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? How will you respond to these vital questions posed by Mary Oliver? How is the mindfulness-based cognitive therapy program going to help you realize your heart's deepest desires, your desire for greater happiness, wholeness, satisfaction, and overall well-being? It's quite possible that everything that we have gone through might not be obvious, and everything that you've learned might not be obvious to you right now. And so now it's important to reflect on the last few weeks, lots of few weeks, and realize that the real week 8, or in our case, the real week 27 is now the rest of our lives. Using everything, all the techniques, all the information that you've gathered, all the practices that you've learned, and implement them into your personal life and figuring out a plan on how you are going to sustain this mindfulness practice, how you are going to choose to do it to help with your mental health and to keep you mentally healthy. The aim of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy is to, 1, help you recognize earlier and respond more skillfully to unhelpful thoughts and patterns and signs and symptoms that create emotional distress, perpetuate that negative feedback loop, and entangle you in negative struggling and persistent emotional suffering. And also to cultivate a new way of being so that you are removing those destructive patterns of mind so you are less likely to be triggered, that you are allowing yourself to live all of life with a greater sense of well-being, ease, and overall satisfaction, and that you are more ready to trust your mind's inner wisdom and let it guide you with kindness through emotional turmoil, distress, and discomfort. Now, it might be helpful to look at what other people found most helpful in this program. And so I'm going to give you a couple of sentences, and you are going to rate for yourself 1 through 10, 1 meaning not important at all, and 10 meaning most extremely important for the theme. So after going through this program, how important is knowing what pulls mood down and recognizing early warning signs to you? Or learning new ways to step out of patterns of negative thoughts and feelings. How important is seeing negative thoughts and feelings differently as parts of an emotional package and not me? What about feeling less helpful in the face of unwanted emotion? Feeling less alone, seeing that many other people experience depression and other difficult emotions and that it's not just me. Being kinder and less critical to myself. And lastly, how important is valuing myself more, recognizing and meeting my own needs? So listening to those statements and deciding on a scale of 1 to 10, how valuable and important are they to you? By reflecting on the benefits you have gained from practicing mindfulness and implementing it into your daily life, you now have seeds of good intention that can support your practice now into the future. It is shown that evidence has proven that continuing mindfulness practice, even after learning it and benefiting from it, but continuing that practice will help you continue to remove yourself from emotional suffering and distress and depression, even if it's just a few minutes a day. And remembering that you can do baby steps. So that action plan might start with 3-minute breathing space, might even start with a 5-minute sitting meditation, and you might build upon that so that eventually you're doing 15, 20, 30 minutes a day. And it might become that kind of time of day for you to recenter yourself and find that peace for yourself. Next week will be our last week of going through the Mindful Way workbook, and we will be looking at how to sustain mindfulness practice, and I will be giving you some final tips and techniques to carry this practice through the next moments of your life and hopefully the rest of it. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next week. I hope that you have a wonderful and mindful Monday.